Hi, it's Kevin May, the Editor-in-Chief of PhocusWire. This is PundIT Show number 16. We normally do these as audio, but as we're here at the Phocuswright Conference, we've got this one in glorious Technicolor. So thank you very much to Miriam Moscovici from BCD, Richard Harris from Intent Media, and last but not least, Douglas Quinby, the CEO of Arival and a Phocuswright analyst. So can I call you that now?
Call me whatever you like, Kevin.
Okay,
as long as I can call you whatever I want.
You generally do normally, so that's great. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us again. You've been on this before, so you know what we do here, Miriam. So what we're going to do first of all is just kind of have a little chat about some of the things that have been going on here, particular reference to Tuesday. So you two were heavily involved in Tuesday. You saw a lot of the things, which is the summit and launch day where you have established companies and startups showing off their wares, as it were. So Richard, we'll start with you. What did you see on Tuesday that kind of either excited you first of all, and then what dismayed you maybe?
Yeah, I think what was exciting, we were chatting about this before, is in the past there's always been 50% of the startups where we think that travel planning is broken, and so we're going to solve it with a combination of unique content, social integration, and blah blah blah. And then you look
mean blah blah blockchain.
Yeah.
Right.
But then you look, and the world is just this wasteland, like this battlefield of dead startups that have tried to fix travel planning and sort of be the starting point for, and there was, I think, only one this year, so that was nice.
Well, but there is a company that is trying to get into that space. It's a little bit bigger, not a startup anymore. It's called Tripadvisor.
Yes.
What do you think of that?
So
think they have a go?
I don't want to say anything terrible about Tripadvisor because I admire them in a lot lot of ways.
Okay.
And Steve's in the green room 10 feet behind us.
But to me, the thing that in general travel companies get wrong is they don't understand the level of relevance that travel is in a person's life. And so they'll look at data on people do surveys of what were the most important experiences of your whole life. And travel is always in the top 3. There'll be some travel experience like giving birth, getting married, those. And so you're like, oh wow, it's up there, right? So we should be able to create a social network, or we should be able to create daily relevance of travel. It's just not the case, right? It is a peak lifetime experience, but people only give a crap about it once or twice a year. And so if you're trying to create a social feed or any sort of core organizational social structure around travel, I think except for a very, very tiny set of people, it's just not going to work because it's not relevant enough all the time.
Douglas, it sounds like you might have an opinion on Tripadvisor's second attempt to become a social travel engine, as it were.
Well, I think Richard makes a really good point, and it's borne out in research that we've been doing at Phocuswright for many years, which is most travelers take 2.5 trips a year, and so
one is to visit their parents.
Yeah, or Aunt Sally in Omaha, and the other is the big family vacation.
Yeah.
And so it's just, however, on the flip side, there is something to it, which is travel is also, it is that impactful experience. It's extraordinarily aspirational. I think it's why Instagram is kind of like this sort of travel kind of porn experience for so many people and has an enormous following. So there's definitely, I think we all believe there's something there. People, they have those aspirations of going somewhere. Maybe Trip can tap into that. I think it does feel like a little bit of a
But they did it before with Trip Friends.
Well, that was a
different type of thing.
That was
remember
different.
Where Are You Now, Wayne?
Mm-hmm.
Bought by lastminute.com a couple of years ago.
What I thought when I heard that competitor, I actually don't remember their name now. When they started talking about trip planning, I immediately kind of cringed, and I tried to control my eyes because I knew I was on camera. Because we've heard so many of these trip planners, and right, they're all in the wasteland. And what I think saved him in the end was when he said that he was more of a B2B kind of solution, right? He wasn't looking to go out into the consumer world to be a trip planner for everybody. He just wanted to associate his business with other businesses, right? To add sort of a service to an existing business or a supplier. Now, I'm going to say something that's not going to surprise you, I don't think, which is I think trip planning has got an opportunity, but I think that it is about affinity. And we've seen in the past people do trip planning for millennials or trip planning for bachelor parties or bachelorette parties. But what we don't see, and you just mentioned people take 2.6 trips a year. Well, baby boomers take 4 to 5 trips a year, right? Senior citizens spend more money than millennials or anyone else. They've got $30 trillion in 401ks right now sitting just in America that's going to come into the market in the next 15 years. And when baby boomers begin spending their retirement accounts, they are looking at long-term trip planning, long-term legacy spending of what they've saved their 40 years being employed. And I said this last time, but I still don't see anyone looking at this biggest demographic that there is, which is baby boomers, who have nothing to do but spend their children's inheritance on life-changing, you laugh, but it's true, the greatest generation saved their money to leave to their heirs. The baby boomers save their money to spend while they're alive with their families. And we don't see anybody paying attention to them. I think trip planning is one of those areas where if you could associate it with an affinity like a baby boomer, we know that baby boomers, only 20% of them have ad blockers. They are 40% more likely to share on social media than millennials. There's a huge opportunity to capitalize
on Facebook.
On Facebook, right? There's a huge opportunity to capitalize on this demographic who has nothing but money, nothing but time, no restrictions on calendar, and are intent on planning long-term for years. My parents are booked out to 2022. And they're spending tons of money, and nobody is doing anything.
Miriam. There's no denying that there's a huge opportunity there, and I agree.
You don't see a blue hair travel planning social tool?
No, it's definitely an overlooked demographic because the industry has been obsessed with millennials for far too long. But so what's the economic model? Like, where's the money in travel planning?
Yeah, I think that it's similar into how, older people use all sorts of technology tools to manage how they save and where they save.
I'll just say I'm much more interested, frankly, like in what Richard and Intent is doing. The future of all of this is, it's data, it's personalization, and so I'd much rather talk about what you're doing, frankly, than about this idea of social, kind of trip planning. Now, if Trip or any other player can really nail the personalization piece, the data piece, and that was actually a really interesting thing that came out of the discussion with Steve Hafner yesterday, where Booking Holdings is undergoing a pretty profound transformation just fundamentally in their culture and their strategy from, its brand separation first to basically like a brand portfolio play to a data play where everything is integrated and data comes first and delivering that kind of personalized offering. That is really interesting. Look, people are always going to go online and they're going to go to this site and that site and they're going to shop and they're going to fantasize. They're going to go to all of these different sites. This idea that there's going to be one site that's just going to make it all, because people love the hunt. That's never going to change. So they're going to go everywhere.
And I think, just bringing it back, what you said about Instagram, I think is right. Like if there's this sort of, I think a lot of, at the very upper end, the inspiration phase of travel is entirely visual, right? People are shopping visually. They're looking at photos of things. And so in some sense, I give credit to Tripadvisor for saying, yeah, we should sort of be there and the relevant photos are going to come from your network. I just think it's Instagram is much more likely to own that space because people are there every day anyway, and people won't be at Tripadvisor. But I think, even that sort of photo-based inspiration, there's going to be a massive data component to it as well. And, Instagram and other networks do a great algorithmic job of figuring out what it is that people want to see. For better or worse, they're getting really good at it. And I think everyone, whether you're Instagram or Facebook or a travel company, you're going to need to be ahead of the curve in figuring out what it is that people want to see, because ultimately transactions are going to work that way too, not just inspiration.
It's extraordinary. It's 2018 and we spent 10 minutes talking about trip planning.
Not by my choice.
He started it.
Okay. Yeah, and I was just so glad that no one's talking about trip planning. And here we are talking about trip planning.
I mean,
we spent 5 years at Phocuswright trying to get away from it, so thanks a lot.
maybe you didn't have your finger on the button after all, Douglas. Maybe it says more about you. But
I've never said I had my finger on the button. Maybe just your button.
well, hey, so with your finger on someone else's button, just give us a sense of what you think people should be talking about here, apart from boomer trips.
I want to talk about chatbots and blockchain.
No, you don't.
AI.
I can see you glassing over a little bit. Nor tours and activities.
Are any chatbots still alive? Like was it last year or 2 years ago? Everything was a chatbot.
Right.
And then, are there any chatbots doing anything?
I think within some of the brands they use them. I mean, KLM has talked
Correct.
a lot about its chatbots through Facebook Messenger and says it's been a success.
Customer service.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's what brands initially did with Twitter as a kind of customer service.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see how imperfect that was. And the obvious extension is using customer service and chat as a function. I mean, my God, who on earth wants to actually pick up a phone and call that 1-800 number to speak to a call center? But if I can get my thing dealt with over chat, and what's also
And sometimes you don't even realize that's
Yeah.
the way that technology has evolved.
And what I love, and sorry, I will just only bring up tours and activities really slightly, but just to say, I've even noticed it's very common among sort of small to medium-sized operators now. So you go to their website, you will see a little thing that comes up, hey, you want to chat with one of our customer service agents. If even the smallest company can do that,
That's right.
there's no reason why any of these companies who are here at an online travel can't use this to just totally crush it with their customers.
Does that answer your question then? What
Yes.
happened to all the chatbots?
They're all customer service tools.
Yeah.
It's quite a relief that there hasn't been 15 blockchain related innovators this week.
Well,
No.
it was funny. We had somebody who said he's the blockchain without the blockchain. That was his kind of tagline.
Arise.
Right. Yeah, the guys who are doing identity.
Right.
So they had this other format. I forget what it's called.
Nodes. They kept saying
Nodes,
nodes.
yeah.
Nodes.
And then the one
It's
blockchain
Nadine
startup.
from Arise Travel. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not Arise.
Oh, okay.
No, it was. So Arise actually is the blockchain sort of booking ecosystem, and then there's another one. It's the guys who do ePassport. I forget the name of the company now.
That's right. I also
think
forget.
it's. I can't remember. But they are doing like the thing that would be a classic blockchain startup, and they're not using blockchain. And then Arise, which actually is a blockchain startup. I don't know if you noticed this. He did not say blockchain.
It was deliberate. I mean,
Yeah,
he
it was
introduced
deliberate.
himself
We
to
had him
me.
in here
Yeah.
afterwards, and he said I didn't want to do it because people either their eyes, as I said earlier, their eys start
Yeah.
glazing
But you know,
over, and
that's-
people go, "Oh no, it's here we
We'll
go."
know that blockchain is real when blockchain startups stop calling themselves blockchain startups and
Right.
just call themselves startups. When a
distribution
company
companies
like
or
Lufthansa says, "Hey, we've got this great new project that we're going to do to track bags or do this," then we know that blockchain has arrived. When it's not a blockchain project, it is simply a project that's going to advance the business.
I definitely don't want to spend 10 minutes talking about
Thank
blockchains.
God.
Good. So let's move on. So I'm not going to ask you this one first of all because you were involved in this. The power paradox is this year's theme. Do you kind of get what it's trying to say? And do you agree with some of its theories, or theories is maybe the wrong word, but saying the powerful can still become threatened and all this kind of thing. Do you agree with
The
that?
powerful can.
The powerful.
So
still,
my answer to your first question is no.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Okay.
So are the powerful vulnerable?
Yes.
Yes, I think so.
Do you sense then, when Glenn Fogel is on stage in there, that he looks weak in some areas then?
No, but I do still think that there are macro. So every time it has seemed like we're at some sort of stasis point or some point of equilibrium in the industry. And I'm like, okay, this is what travel looks like now. It all gets blown apart, like it's never ceased to happen. Now, I understand like when you see consolidation, like we've seen in airlines, in hotels, in distribution, it gets hard to imagine how that changes, right? Because there's so much power there. But then you look at, this will be a strange example, but if in 1980, you had looked at the beer market in the United States and you're like, well, it's Bud Miller, and I don't know who else. And you'd be like, how is that going to change? You know, they own distribution, they've got massive economies of scale, huge marketing budgets, everyone knows their brand. That's done. That's what beer is going to look like. And then people wake up one day and they're like, Budweiser sucks. It tastes like shit. Are you allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sweet. And then these little things start popping
There's
up.
always room for great product. I mean, that's like, who would have thought, like, 8 years ago or 10 years ago that 3 guys in a room without a lick of travel experience would create the 4th largest online travel agency in the world. You know, but there's always room for great product.
And Airbnb, I think there's massive fragmentation in hotel, and people don't want to just stay at a Marriott anymore. Airbnb has been able to deliver an entirely new class of product at massive scale. And so I don't know what's
They also
next.
did that into an environment that ordinarily with hotels is fairly regulated.
Yeah.
I think that was very interesting about the Airbnb thing, is that they just ignored regulations and local government taxes and things like that. I know they're coming round a little bit now, but they just did it anyway.
Yeah.
I don't sense that could happen in aviation, because it's
certainly
even more regulated.
Yeah.
Definitely harder.
It's definitely harder.
And you actually hear it from a lot of investors. They're historically gun shy about investing in air startups because of those issues, because of the consolidation and just also the margins on distribution. But that's changing, because there have been some interesting air startups, and even so Kiwi is another great example.
Yeah.
Like there's always room for innovative, great product.
Yeah. Okay, Miriam, there's been some fairly hefty investments in your sector this year.
I think that's a great example.
Where did that come from?
It's exactly what we're talking about. I come from a large mega TMC. We're a global travel management company, and around the fringes, we see a ton of action, right, in corporate travel. These digital-only, chatbot-based, or really just digital-only corporate travel management companies.
But some of them don't even have the tech bells and whistles on them. They're just a different type of interface.
That's right.
So why have they managed to get $100 million in one case? I mean, that's...
Yeah, TripAction's 144 million.
Yeah, 145 million. They're valued at $1 billion, I think, last week they were saying. I think there's a huge opportunity in business travel.
What's BCD's valuation?
I actually don't really know. A lot. But I think I think it's a great example, right, of the big dogs have always got folks nipping at their heels, and whether that means that we've got to create new solutions that are addressing that different type of market, or whether we've got to kind of play defense or offense, I think that it affects us all. But I think our business in particular, in business travel, there are tons of them. There's at least a dozen, right, over the last couple of years that have evolved in business travel. For now, they are all staying in the lightly managed or unmanaged space. But you heard, I think, on stage yesterday, Lola announced their exclusive deal with American Express Global Business Travel. And that's going to do something. I think that shows that Omega is looking at a smaller technology company that can help them potentially attack the SME market, the small, medium enterprise market.
Are the big TMCs vulnerable?
I think that they are always going to be vulnerable. I think that one thing that we bring to the table immediately is massive scale, right? When you have a multinational corporation who's in a lot of countries, who needs service, you literally need to issue tickets in different countries,
And
right?
you've also got historical relationships with corporations that go back decades.
Absolutely. And it's
So
not
to
just...
rewire those so that they would suddenly go and work with Travel Perk or something.
Right, and I don't think
it'd be
anyone should make
hard.
the mistake that business travel is simply just issuing the same types of tickets, but it's for a business traveler. There's a whole variety of services, right, that go along with that. I don't want to talk poorly about anyone, but the blossoming of some of these digital-only TMCs for small business, it reminds me a little bit of the way we used to talk about Southwest Airlines about 15, 20 years ago, when we used to call them LCCs, right, low-cost carriers. And then someone said, well, they're low-fare carriers, not low-cost carriers. And when they have legacy costs, right, of the main lines, we're going to see something very different. And where are we today? Southwest Airlines has legacy costs. They have pensions they're paying. They've got older aircraft, right? They're in a very different situation that they were. So I'd be very curious to see, fast forward 10 years from now, when some of those smaller digital TMCs need to start attracting multinational customers and need to start dropping offices all over the world and have scale, are we going to be in the same position? And is the technology going to be enough to compensate for the fact that scale really matters when it comes to dealing with large corporations? I think it's left to be said. That being said, there's really smart people working with really great technology. So I'm up for the challenge, because for folks like us, that causes us to wake up and make very different decisions. So it's exciting.
Well, it's good to be kept on your toes. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bring it on. I say, come at me, bro.
But also, I think it's sort of like the same sort of disruptions. Like, it's hard to imagine, Amex corporate travel or your business sort of getting, just because you're so big with so many relationships. But then I see, like Trip Actions, where corporate travel policy in my life has usually been a source of annoyance, right?
Yes.
It's sort of heavy and they're telling you what you do and can't do.
That's a euphemistic way of putting it. But
But then Trip Actions comes along and almost like gamifies or turns it into an incentive. And so employees want to use this product because they want to comply, because they get some benefit, in the form of a gift card or whatever they get back in terms of the savings. And that's just like a crazy model that you would never think could scale and work. And then, fast forward a couple of years, they're going to turn around and say, oh, British Airways, by the way, now $4 billion of air tickets flows through us. So what can you do for my customers? Who knows if that'll happen, but you can see it. It's just like a crazy turning on its head of models. I think that can happen anywhere.
I think the employer
except maybe
reward,
aviation.
the employer reward thing also. I wonder. I'm a little more hesitant to say that this is a long-term thing. I think, especially in the United States, we're in an economic situation, right, where retaining employees, attracting employees is difficult. And so it might seem natural to pay your employee to fly and coach. Doesn't work for all companies, right? A large global bank isn't going to go for this kind of program because they don't want the Wall Street Journal printing a story saying our executives are paid to fly and coach, right? But fast forward 5 years from now, maybe we're in a different economic situation. I would be surprised if corporations are still looking to compensate employees for making financially frugal decisions with their own clients' money. So I think a lot of it has to do with where we're at right now.
Okay.
That being said, they're doing a bang-up job.
Coming towards the end,
Are we done? No, I want to talk about.
Come on, what else do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Sleepbox.
Oh yeah, let's talk about Sleepbox. Just quickly then,
I
and then
just
we'll
have
get
to
on to
say-
the
I just have to say,
question roulette.
Sleepbox
Because he
was-
won a string. He won 2, 3
Yeah,
awards.
yeah. And I think we were all excited about it. I think, we very rarely get to see innovation that is you can touch. And they didn't bring a unit with them, but that you can touch and you can feel.
We feel fairly vindicated because we named them earlier on this week as one of our Hot 25 travel startups to watch. So
I think
we feel that at least someone.
And it's so
believes
interesting
us.
because, on the consumer side, super. But when I think about that in business travel, I think about my customers that have 500,000 square feet in downtown San Francisco, that their space is empty between 7 o'clock at night and 8 in the morning. Yeah. And 400 employees a night are paying $500 a night to stay across the street at a hotel, or they're driving an hour and a half away out of the city to find a hotel room that they can afford. So, I've been talking about this space and how we use it, and it's an industrial design issue, which Sleepbox, I think, is starting to work on. It's a regulatory issue, but I think there's something there. I think that companies are going to start looking for how can we make better use of the space that we own, keep our employees comfortable, keep them on campus maybe, and stop spending crazy cash to be able to stay across the street. So they really excited me, and they might not be the last, the first, the best. There might be 100 of them coming, but I think this is right. I think this is really exciting that somebody is thinking about space, how we use it, and I think corporations are going to be paying close attention to how they might be able to leverage this type of thing in their own space. Were you guys excited about this too?
Yeah, for sure. So I thought aesthetically, it was just a cool idea. And aesthetically, it was beautiful. But then I was also thinking about it in terms of like WeWork's model.
Yes.
Like if you think of
Yes.
WeWork is sort of taking your standard inflexible office space, and in Manhattan that might be $100 per square foot, and they're just transforming it into something flexible and more suited towards a big chunk of the market, and turning that $100 per square foot into $1,000 per square foot because they use it differently. I was trying to do I don't know what the math is, but I think they're going to be able to do something very similar because they just got these mobile units, and they can take something that is office space sold at X, turn it into a per night cost, and be reselling it at 5X.
Yes.
It's cool.
Okay,
Very
right.
cool.
We do have to wrap things up. So put your hand in, pull out a question, answer it truthfully. Okay? Take one out
Truthfully.
and then pass it round. We go round twice.
All right.
Over to you. Richard? Read the question out and then give us your answer.
Identify a mistake you see people making more often than any other. I think a lot of people fail to realize that no one cares about you or is paying as much attention to you as you.
Okay.
And so if your hair is messy in the morning, no one gives a shit except you, and they won't even notice. And that extends all the way up to
Thank you
your whole
very
life.
It takes an hour to get this straight. That's disappointing. What am I like outside of work? I think people would be surprised. I'm super chill and very boring. I read a lot, and I'm a bird feeder enthusiast.
Oh.
I like my birds.
That's good to know. I appreciate that information.
Douglas?
How much of your work time do you try to keep unscheduled?
All?
I don't. I honestly don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Oh, more?
We'll go around once more.
Okay.
Yep, and then we'll wrap it up.
What travel industry development or brand do you wish you'd thought of first?
Trip planning.
Definitely Uber.
Yep. Okay. Miriam?
What question do you never want to be asked in interviews? Honestly, I should be embarrassed by this, but probably anything super business MBA related. I am a feeling person. I'm an idea person.
Okay.
So I can't talk about unit economics. That's their job.
Okay. Over to Mr. Unit Economics, last of all.
Name something you like and dislike most about your role. Oh, well.
Your new one.
Well, this is so...
Maybe just say your old one.
Most like and dislike about your role. Well, I most like having the opportunity to interact with people like Richard and Miriam, without question, and the opportunity to be at events like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I most dislike the having to answer ridiculous questions out of a bag.
Thank you for your honesty. Thank you very much to Miriam, to Richard, and to Douglas for joining us on PundIT Show number 16. We'll have you back another time. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Just like to wave into that camera there. Thank you very much.
You're really going to invite me back?
No.